In science, what is creation? At this point in time, as we end the 20th century, the scientific community has come to the conclusion that there indeed was a beginning. The reason why there is believed to be a beginning is because there is a discernible expanding universe. If the universe is expanding, then the implication would be that if you were to go backward in time, the universe would be contracting. It would contract and contract and contract and contract to the point that everything would be compressed into one thing. The moment before that is what we call the moment immediately preceding the Big Bang. The moment when this one thing explodes or begins to expand is the moment which is called the Big Bang. And that's from the scientific perspective. If one were to challenge a scientist and to ask, what was there the moment before the Big Bang? What was that before the Big Bang? The normal answer would simply be nothing. That the Big Bang is the beginning of something. What does it begin? It begins time, space, and matter. The point that we call the Big Bang is when matter begins, when time begins, and when space begins. So then when one goes back and asks the question, what was there before the Big Bang? The response remains nothing, but logically there's a difficulty with that nothing. Because we all understand very well that nothing is unable to give birth to something. So therefore we're forced to say that the nothing which pre-existed the Big Bang, if I can coin a term, must have been pregnant nothing. Because again, if there was simply nothing, then something cannot result out of nothing. It would remain nothing. But by the virtue of the fact that we see something, that means, where did that come from? The reason why the scientist says there was nothing beforehand, because what is that nothing which they're describing? It's nothing in terms of something, correct? It's nothing in terms of what we're aware of. It's nothing in terms of physics. This thing which is there before there is time is not simply on a timeline before time. It's something which exists on a completely different plane. It's outside of the realm of time, something which transcends time. And the same in terms of matter, and the same in terms of space. The existence before the Big Bang is an existence which transcends what we know of. Scientists have a difficulty with this because a scientist can only explain data which is in front of them. For a scientist to try to explain the data, which is obviously not in front of them, which is prior to what is in front of them, the scientist is frustrated. Now, one way of dealing with that frustration is simply to ignore it. Another way of dealing with the frustration is a beautiful quote which I came upon on page 3 of the handouts. It was authored by a man by the name of Robert Jastrow, who was the head of the Goddard Space Observatory for NASA. He was also professor of geology at Columbia University, New York. And listen to his description of this phenomenon. Scientists cannot bear the thought of a natural phenomenon which cannot be explained, even with unlimited time and money. There is a kind of religion in science. It is the religion of a person who believes that there is order and harmony in the universe, and every event can be explained in a rational way as a product of some previous event. Every effect must have its cause. There is no first cause. Einstein wrote, "The scientist is possessed by the sense of universal causation," unquote. This religious faith of the scientist is violated by the discovery that the world had a beginning under conditions in which the known laws of physics are not valid, and as a product of forces or circumstances we cannot discover. When that happens, the scientist has lost control. If he really examined the implications, he would be traumatized. As usual, when faced with trauma, the mind reacts by ignoring the implications. In science, this is known as, quote, refusing to speculate, or trivializing the origin of the world by calling it the Big Bang, as if the universe were a firecracker. Now, we would like to pursue that inquiry farther back in time, but the barrier to further progress seems insurmountable. It's not a matter of another year, another decade of work, another measurement, or another theory. At this moment, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. this frustration which Jastrow over here is trying to describe is when a scientist realizes that I just simply cannot explain that nothing which is there. And logically, that thing before creation is not simply nothing. So let's use it as the term which I used before, pregnant nothing. But let's go a little bit further with creation to try to understand what creation is. What was there the moment before creation? We're getting a little tired of simply saying nothing. It's something which is outside of time, outside of space, and outside of matter. What is another way of calling that? Or infinite. Something which is in no way, shape, or form limited or has any parameters. The term for that is infinity. Which means that the moment of creation is the moment when finite matter begins to exist. That moment, and I can't call it a moment even, that concept, before there is time, before there is matter, you could call it antimatter, but that again is a negative definition based upon what exists. It's something which seems to exist just simply on a completely different plane.